So I have to make it simpler. So that's where I did the Dutch Hacking Health Award. And I won the Dutch Hacking Health Award by taking an OLED TV, which is also the same OLED phones, and changing any blue light bidirectional microwave transmitting device that can enable photon biomodulation, make people feel healthier better. But again, we have that knowledge gap. Persons go, how do I do the setting? If I'm Android versus Apple, I can't do the one or the other. Or it costs like, back then it was 1,000 euros for a TV or 1,600 euros for a TV, or iPhones also 1,000 euros. Persons were complaining, I cannot access it, I cannot do it, I don't want to make the change. So then comes the next part. That's why I looked at more research. I found, okay, let's see what's cheap enough on the market. The orange plastic, first I was using red duct tape, but they wasn't doing the needed parts. And also LED lights have horrible flicker. So looking for this polymer, which is the orange PVC plastering tape, it's something that is ubiquitous. People can find, they can grab it. And that's what we demonstrate in the course we taught at the beginning of the year from around the world. We gave different technology solutions, screening software, filtering lights, all these things. But all participants that had the tape, we used the red duct tape, went mad. Each day they were filtering and changing the environment more and more aggressively and competing with each other who could do more to the environment. And they felt better and they're able to influence their partners, their spouses, their children, their community, their nature, their own environment. And that was great about Charles Collins as well. We find these persons in nations. What's wonderful about YouTube or social media, identifying persons who want to make a difference, persons who understand pragmatism. Like I said, Charles Collins, I mean, check out a documentary doing it. There's another one coming out with him with explaining this information even more. He was a disabled veteran, right? He's taking money from the state. He wasn't employed. He had great scientific knowledge, but he demonstrated a will, demonstrated perseverance. We took what's been demonstrated in science and we have him as a role model to be empowered to teach and grow in communities. So he grows so much food on his little plot of ground in the desert. He's feeding people around him as well for free. So we take what are this mess of other people's and we put into pragmatism. So any of these documents, like you said, we are complaining about why they're not doing it, because persons are trained or conditioned to be in an energy flux model. We have to apply the photon flux model. That's what's been put together. And when applying that model, it works every single time. And the significant gains are predictable, they're probable. So this is why, like I said, if you have a complaint or not sure, as ICNIRP and WHO say, change the light bulb. Then you'll see the RF parts are a lot easier to deal with. And you're getting a lot faster and better results.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, I think changing the light is fantastic. However, there are public auditory effect levels that people have not been made aware of. There are legally binding sensory effect levels that the World Health Organization are not adhering to in their offices. ICNIRP 2020 guidelines are in breach of at least two EMF directives. So ICNIRP 2020 guidelines should not be applied by any EU regulator in any of the 27 EU member states. All of the ICNIRP 2020 guidelines have removed non-thermal effects, and the EMF directive clearly states that non-thermal exposure can cause health effects, and that's only based on 6 minutes exposure.
Correct. So again, these are again, when you're having a document put in draft. So example, there's the EU Commission report, ICNIRP report. I'm using the light part again because it's easier for general public to understand. It's part of the thematic message. In the report, they published the draft. One of the sites published the draft before the final version. And the difference is they changed some of the words and sentences between the final and the second final version, right? The draft version before the final. And it was again the element of the light and screen exposure for on devices for persons. And they said there as well, for adults, it's blue light not to be, I think it was not more than 3 or 5 hours per day. That was in the final draft version, but it was taken out in the final version because back then it wasn't pragmatic, and a policy person who did not have the scientific understanding or technical part removed it. And we see this in history with science diplomats as well. Like I said, yes, I agree with you. Persons do not know, or things have gone astray. But this is why, as this committee, we've grown, and this is for South Africa I'm explaining. and I communicate with other committees around the world. Guys are retiring, or guys, girls, women, however you want, are retiring. New persons are coming in. But as it states with the advisory committees, it must be multiple departments and people voicing together as a collective. So again, if people are not following, they're taking a stand or guideline, misinterpreting it, it is our job, and as the judge said, to come together and communicate. And the easiest way to communicate is to do by demonstration. And especially if something is so dirt cheap and so simple, others will follow. So just like you say, with the persons are overexposing themselves with the routers in a school or even a transmitter, you just go and unplug the router and you change the effect. But you show the person, look, there's still a signal. You're still going to have a high amount. But let us address the other parts first and evolve to it, because you can order a different router, even with the gigahertz you're asking about. You have your 5G routers, different frequencies. You have what's in them also called sub-bands or sub-configurations. So even on your own personal router in your home that a person would have, if they still choose to have their Wi-Fi routers, they can choose a 50 hertz or 20 hertz or 80 hertz sub-band. And the choice of which one will have significant differences on biological impact. So just by even changing that is a way of bioadaptation. But as per the Telecommunications Act, if one is not presenting information, if one does not do gatekeeping at a municipal level, one as science or community cannot intervene of saying, how can we do it differently? How can we configure with the new technology, new solutions? That is a theme. So yes, you completely correct.
The answer is quite simple. People just need to know that the only exposure, because I don't use Wi-Fi, it's the device that uses Wi-Fi. So the only exposure that anybody should be subjected to are the operational levels. And the operational levels are measured in nanowatts per square meter and picowatts per square meter. My background is wireless technology, by the way. So when it comes to exposure, the only exposure any of us ever need to be subjected to are those levels required for the device to operate. And no device, regardless of frequency, requires a signal of in excess of 1 microwatt per square meter.
Correct, and that's why we do the different configurations, different applications.
Look, I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic. I think it's brilliant. I was just sort of adding in, it would be helpful for people to realize that they just need to turn down the power. Just turn down the power. It's that simple.
So Alan, it's different. The context is so that it's persons are when they're given, like when they sign up for say fiber optic at home. And one of the ways around towers is that you pay a lower rate for your router, and you agree that it can be a piggyback device for everybody else in the neighborhood. So on that grounds, if you don't look at the fine print or know better, you're signing off to propagate this even further. Because a person's thinking of the energy flux model and not a photon flux of less and more, I can get better out of it. So it's like I said, I have to present in Parliament, I have to educate different persons. It's about also other people learning. Me even being disabled myself, it's not, I am reliant on other people to help with communication for me. And like saying, turning on the powers, that's why engineers, you work, you collaborate, do it differently. But the game is also changing now with satellites. From economies of scale, wireless transmission by satellites is the cheapest way to go. I'm telling you, if you're running a business, if you're buying stock, if you're doing investment, that's also why these transmitters have been going up like crazy, because satellites will take them out on competition now to one. This is also why Rwanda and their president, very intelligent guy, and Rwanda, because of their investment into satellite communications, wireless telecommunications for satellites, getting help from out in the world, and they're going to be launched, I think, the application for over 300,000 satellites, and they can do it because military and the planes and easy low orbital will become one of the, or probably the richest country in Africa, because they will be able to piggyback on the income of everybody else using technology. But they are also themselves in a very highly bioadaptive environment. So Rwanda, horrible genocide, almost wiped out completely, horrible worst things. But learning from that horribleness They thought, what can we do to protect ourselves? And we're going to be an environment that we can deal with the radiation or attacks from anybody else by using financial input and gain. However, as the president is, very intelligent guy, focused on foresight. As my understanding, he also has insight that even though it's going telecommunications route, it is other ways to not go back into war times again like before in genocide, but to do it by way of having people live differently. I mean, if you look at pictures of Rwanda and how those guys do like the cold joy thing, not in cold, but in that environment that they are in. He does, even now, he just on LinkedIn, he was advertising how he chucked out a whole bunch of Chinese business nationals because they weren't going with this African spirit of how treating people. So it's, if you, like I said, with John Paul Pope II, Tutu, other people, put people in the right environment, the right metabolic energy, as we taught in Quantum Brain in the course, persons will come up with amazing solutions and change the environment significantly. This is what is demonstrated in that course. So you saying turn on the power, you're 100% correct, but you have to give an alternative that's going to replace what is people are planning to do in rollout. Because it's at this stage, it's impossible to stop out rollout, but we can bioadapt differently. Like you saw that image with the mushrooms. Nature's not going to be enough anymore. So we have to use certain clinical interventions or human intervention technology to give nature that real boost. That is the reality here. And that's what our advisement as a group or committee here are doing. So we're not dismantling any of the stuff. But as you said, that the word, the language, nanometer, picos, these things, it's not necessarily easy for persons yet. So by them understanding, as Pierre said, the cold joy, once they get this thing of why do I feel better? Like I said, the groups of this guys and then start quoting the stuff. Pierre put a little documentary together recently, understanding the researching, learning more. And you are going to have charlatans out there as well, but we're using government and science together to help remove those elements. And that is how we will help those persons in WHO. Because I mean, Alan, even you yourself, and that's why we encourage other committee members around the world and persons, any government institution, any government person or person who become part of government can be part of leading this change. So it's if you, like I say, turn on the power, you go in there and you show a different router. The stuff is so cheap and ubiquitous, it's a no-brainer, no question.
No, absolutely. Yeah, well, one of the difficulties, I suppose, for some people is with their routers, is that the manufacturers and the software interface, the manufacturers don't permit the router to be the power to be turned down. They don't allow for the transmit power. I'm thinking of a Liberty Global cable modem. They don't allow for the transmit power to be turned down. So, and for most people, the idea of logging onto a device they just can't do it. They really need to have a switch.
But you have laws in place to enforce them to provide that access. That's why I put there the Equality Act like we have, which is similar to other parts of the world. You even have that's what I use in the court cases in Dutch law as well. And the UN resolution of 2016 states that these things have to be done as mandated.
Yeah. And so could we just on one last thing on the nanobubbles? I think the nanobubbles are brilliant. So with regard to the devices and the water pump and stuff, do you have a website where people can go and they can learn how to do this themselves?
Just because anything in the report is so ubiquitous, so out there, you can just Google it and you'll find a YouTube video.
Okay.
And you don't have to do this. You can buy these more expensive solutions from China or different pumps and this thing, but you can just go to a hardware store, get PVC plumbing tape and parts and that, and make it yourself. And there's different variations of doing it. And the more you understand the physics in that, the better you get the output results. But these things, even just a swimming pool, you can take your swimming pool that you have and convert it into a koi fish pond. And you got a water filtration system, less energy input, and fantastic water that you then jump into without any chemicals that become soothing to your skin, helps build up collagen in your own skin, which means more vitamin D. The more water you have in your skin, the more Faraday protection effect you have to wireless signals. So this is the whole theme here. We're applying what's called a scientific technical NASA methodology. And even, like I said, the whole NASA thing, meaning if I'm limited resource and I have to go to Mars or a spaceship or wherever I am, can I put together a solution? That is, anyone can find these things. So even like on the reports, there's certain points that I don't put a direct reference. it's done on that on purpose because it's so general mainstream already. Like I said, the Nobel Prizes, these things are really general consensus. But we help you as a public of how to Google, see things differently, and then you just share it. It's wonderful. It's such a no-brainer. But it's a no-brainer because you don't have the metabolic energy. But when you do it, you will feel better. You will get better. That is part of the system. If you don't change the environment, you cannot get better. Cool.
Thanks,
Freddie.
James.
Sorry, Alan, we are engaging a lot, but I think I answered your questions. Freddie, you had a question.
Yes, hi, James. Thanks for your time. Wilma is a friend of mine. She invited me to attend. I'm going to come in a bit left field here. I know there's a positive energy in the meeting, but Alan's question was multi-part, and I don't think we touched on everything. But what I want to ask about is the WHO and ICNIRP and all of these bodies have got these standards and things. And what Alan alluded to in his question was they're not always being applied. And he also mentioned the awareness around those standards. Now,
wait, very quickly to correct your language. So we just covered. WHO and ICNIRP do not have standards; they have guidelines.
Guidelines. Either way, look, the point
either
is,
way, it's a very big defined difference. Even when I'm with, because we did education here, when I'm dealing with a judge in court, and that is a big difference between compliance legally and defiance. So
yeah, but hold on, just to clarify, ICNIRP 2020 guidelines are in breach of the existing EU law. They are in breach of the 2013/35/EU EMF safety directive.
Yes,
just to clarify that.
Yes, but remember, Alan, what we said in Dr. Brady, I'll come to you now. So Alan, there's a key definition there. Even if you say something is a standard or a law, if you do not meet the other requirements of monitoring and enforcement, it is no longer standard, it's no longer a law, it becomes a guideline. So therefore, that's why one approach the court or community understanding to ensure that what is put in is what is originally as a standard must be brought back into as a standard and not degraded into a guideline. So that's a very key difference here in the items. Freddie, carry on, please. Yes. So I just had to make it very clear to find that, otherwise it means people overlooking what is clearly defined in the wording, and we need to make sure we have things better demarcated.
Sure. No, I think you've partly answered the question with that reminder. You've mentioned it earlier in the talk as well. But what I want to get to is essentially that, look, I've tracked a little bit what you're all doing, and as I said, I've got a big interest in optimizing our electromagnetic pollution, and I think we're all on the same page. But these more authoritative bodies, they don't seem to propagate that benefits. You pitch this idea that it's up to us, the citizens, to run as a scientific diplomat and go knock on doors and send a message. Yet, look, if these bodies want to achieve something like, vaccinating the people, or they want to implement some, let's say, mask protocol, it is done instantly. They certainly have, the gusto and the right hand to implement such things. But when it's something a little bit less, I can't say quantifiable, because we can quantify the benefits, but it just feels that you're swimming a bit upstream, and you're supposed to get support from these bodies. I don't know if that makes sense, but Wilma can testify. I tried doing something at a school here locally, and it was so difficult to even though the law has changed and you've got a bit of momentum going, it still feels you as an individual as to go and convince someone, and if the World Health Organization could issue the same intensity behind these different drives as they would some others, I suppose it would help the matter just go along a lot more smoothly. I don't know if you get my drift.
You're correct. So again, there's always the gap, and that's why we have that wonderful game taught as children of broken telephone, right? There's a reason why it's taught to children at a very young age, and there's a reason why in this report we specifically put, like you saw, I showed letters, I did references, documents, files, items of showing the transparency and accountability involved in it. If a person just says, oh, WHO said it or government said it. My question is, which person specifically, which director, which person? Because that person is as a director, that's what was said by Judge Soodyall. A director's job is to change and update policy and move forward and find a way to do it. If they're not up to the task, a different director is meant to come in. So even with, like, say, organizations or the vaccine or pharmacology, yes, we've got things with advancements of, overnight billionaires, the vaccination processes and different information being marketed differently. But if persons do not understand basics items of the science and biophysics and what they are not going to understand the next knock-on effects. So when you bring in fear mongering, this is what we taught in the course. A person has low energy metabolism does not have the capable neurochemistry to understand or be receptive to a message. It is completely impossible. It's a self-defense mechanism in nature. That's what we cover in the course in Explain in Medicine. This is very well documented. This is, again, why we show and demonstrate. Just try to have a person have a good night's sleep. And we do that with changing the lights and different items first. And then they can, even, again, if you have a shitty cell intel Wi-Fi router next to you or that, it's not going to make a difference. You're still going to suffer. But working together on it, building that political movement is what has the best advantage to it. And like I said, these things, we're waiting for Nobel Prize Awards to come out. When trying to do any of these arguments before the 2017 Nobel Prize for circadian biology, chronobiology in 2017, these type of discussion debates and even court arguments would have been almost impossible. But because of Nobel Prize Awards, it's a general consensus in the scientific community. It says we don't have to have a sitting around table and many debates. We already know it's not great for us. It's against what we are trying to strive upon. Now, where are the solutions that we can make it better? So even like with a classroom or school, like you said, persons refuse to say, well, I need to study at nighttime. I cannot do it. We can use different lights at nighttime that still allow melatonin production, high IQ, EQ, and have a person go to sleep very easily and be more productive and efficient. This is what we demonstrate in different projects around the world. These are what's things that you or any other person can do. And even great thing with COVID, yes, people are studying from home, which means that teachers, employees, and persons can implement it when they're in their own homeschooling environments and learn on these solutions. And this is what you as government taxpayers pay for. When you hear on the radio, a person say, where are all the science? Why didn't they come up with solutions? It's freaking difficult being, trying to be a researcher and then take it over the political barrier, especially when a person who's being taught that was studying a 1970s textbook like the whole thing with McCree model. They will never understand that, hold on, McCree's being debunked and there's this new model. And it's totally different to everything that I've spent money, got a degree and everything for that I have to defend and justify. So it is diplomacy. It is the words and messages of, I don't know if you ever got to meet the late Desmond Tutu or any of the other guys. When you're with them in their room or they have these movements, there's an energy, there's a passion that comes with it. But those persons need support, and that's the whole thing of government, of working together and understanding. So it's not necessarily about you, it's about what's that next generation person who believes or currently believes to have internet means I need Wi-Fi. To be able to see light, I must have blue light, because that's what they're always exposed to, that extreme energy flux model of it. But demonstrating again and again, it is photon flux always cheaper and easier. And I agree with you, it's a pain in the butt to try and do it. But this is why you get more and more attorneys and advocates on board now and understanding. They have a recipe of, let us do all these steps first. If that person still does not want to even engage in a conversation, or even just to try out something that's so cheap and so easy to implement, this is where you come to the courts. And even when like the Judge Soodyall, and he's going, you know what, it's horrible as government that they didn't want to apply and do these things, the request that you made, Mr. Lech. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to go through the whole process from A to Z straight away, like you did before. And I want you to demonstrate to me in court how government, this department is failing you. And I did that. I had to do the whole money thing, do the application forms, all these things, and still the department defied the judge's directive. So then it's going, okay, this is clear, it's public domain, it's public interest. The judge said, I want you to go through it in the public interest. And this is what a court system is. It's about showing public domain, recording. That's also great about judge courts now being online. People can be more engaged in following it. But a key thing again, what the judge said, yes, you've gone through the system, our own departments haven't complied with it. What sit at the table and let us have a conversation. I'm ordering it now as my directive. If you still refuse to follow my directive of wanting to sit at the table and have a communication, then I will step in. So things are not the same as what they were pre-COVID. We have to do things differently.
James, no, certainly. I think just a simple example that you mentioned out with lights in hospitals, I believe with a talk much earlier that I watched as well, you did change the lighting environment in the hospital your wife was giving birth in. But what I'm trying to make is, if we know the benefits of such changes, and I mean, the science is clear, why is it not driven on a more macro level? And why must we go and put duct tape on the light bulbs and be frowned upon and, you know, potentially get ourselves in trouble? And then, as you said, you can defend yourself, but it's just that it's all seem to work in reverse.
Well, how would you get into trouble for putting duct tape on a light bulb?
Not immediately. Oh, so sorry. I mean, not overall, but in that moment, you know, a person can say, "Hey, what you doing? You know, let's take this off."
No, but they say, "What are you doing?" You say, "Here's the national WHO report."
Yes. No, you can do that, but most likely security will still escort you out if they feel so inclined. But the point still is, it's you fighting for something that's already beneficial and proven, and it just seems that the fight would go so much easier if there could be some, well, you could say, guideline being published. So look, all hospitals, you know, your light environment is absolutely terrible. Your ICU, you know, kids are not sleeping properly. To make these changes and do it now, you know.
Yes, but you asked the key word here, and the theme was growth and development. There's a reason we chose very specific words here. You were saying the word to change. You cannot change a person. You cannot change a husband to be loving. You cannot change a wife to be more motherly. You can grow a person to become something else. You can influence their development to be something else.
No, certainly, James.
And growth takes time.
I'm going to kick a dead horse here. I think I'm going to basically repeat myself, but yet there are bodies, you know, defining environments for us, you know, electromagnetically speaking, lighting environments and so forth. And it seems that there's not enough drive there to make these beneficial changes on our behalf.
Drive starts from the local community. This is why in the report at the very end, I even referenced President Obama, right? Again, it's done because people like the name, they follow it, but he states, he does in his other post documentaries that to try to do stuff at the top, and even you don't have to listen to a person gives advice. I mean, this WHO Advisory Council, ICNIRP, it's an advisory role, but persons want to be intimidated by it. You do not have to do that. It's advice. When it's into applied science and law, that's something different, and one has to evolve with that. But there's also contingencies for it. And what Obama said very critically, to make the quickest change on national level, you do it at the local level, even in your own residential suburb, your community. You have a committee and you make changes there. If a person has a lot of money and it makes it harder, doesn't mean another community in another province or another city or town cannot make a change. And that's what we did here, the residential state with our domain. It's a small community. And there's also the hospitals, a small community. But making those changes there makes the changes on the national level. So it's actually, that's again, we're taking wisdom from persons that have been in those top positions. That's why, again, I said we had Ivan Kulyak as part of this whole thing, because he had received a Nobel Prize for peace. Starting at that grassroots, that little community, does far quicker and more difference than trying to tackle a national government or international idea of an organization. This is demonstrated time and time again. It's mathematics that works it out. It sounds weird, but this is again the odd thing with quantum mechanics, quantum biology. It is so counterintuitive. It really, really is counterintuitive, like Pierre does with the cold joy, completely. but practical implementation is so simple and so easy. And that's why I said just doing the tape thing. That's what we demonstrate in the course with people around the world. In Nigeria now, with Adioke on the team, looking to do 30,000 students from one course now to go to 30,000 students. And that's, again, a whole community, a whole education, whole learning, whole application. And we can do 30,000 students because tape is easy to get for anybody. And like even the thing with Anna can just walk into a midwife's or person's home. She has a roll of duct tape, and it's a quick enough way to change those items. So then consumers and buyers who want to make money will change their choices. So yes, it is a tricky thing. Anna, yes, you have a question.
Yeah, I actually can feel Freddie's sort of emotion about this, because in a way you do also need the directives. So, I mean, even though I can do the little bits, but it would make such a difference if there's a directive from the Department of Health or Department of Safety, whatever it is, that says, going forward, all hospitals, all schools have to have red lights. Instead of us having to go and do, it just makes such a difference. It's the same with how I'm fighting with WHO to stop routine antibiotics to HIV-exposed children. Like every day, these kids are having antibiotics. We've done the research, we've proved it. In my small communities, we've stopped giving it to the mothers. But the rest of the world and the rest of South Africa will not stop doing it until there's a directive that says you no longer need to give antibiotics to HIV-exposed children because they actually are harmful. And the research, but unfortunately, they won't listen to small groups. They need, so you've got to get Parliament to say, the Health Committee has got to change this in South Africa. We are destroying people's lives. We've got to change the lights. So, we need big statements.
So Anna, you've been a part of this now already, because you've been part of this report. You've made a statement, you've given your input, you've given a voice, and we've come with practical elements. I mean, that's even like you mentioned now with the whole HIV part. That's the reason why I brought Luke Montagnier into it and the updates to our legislation, because Doug Wallace's work and Himla's work demonstrate this is done. This is why I saw the letter from Parliament where the National Speaker and Committee Chair gave a directive. You must listen to the debriefing of this report, and we must work together as a communication. That is done. But like I said, it does not stop there. There's still, how is it so practical and cheap? And that's also why I put the example of the chickens with the nanobubble water, because as for any of those guys, wherever they are, they have chickens, they have these things, so they can demonstrate their own animals. Hey, I don't need antibiotics for my chickens anymore. They're growing bigger and stronger. So why would the same model not work for my children or the children with HIV, with antiretrovirals? And that's what Doug Wallace's work also showed. They're different genetic type, applying this different way of doing it. It demonstrates one does not do, because it's clear cut in a multiple facets in one way, and it's so much cheaper. So as a DOH official person, again,